Yay, we're living in a horror renaissance. Who clapped? Who clapped for living in such a lucky time to be a little freak? Oh my god. So I'm gonna talk about 3 different horror movies today, but these are going to be full spoilers. I don't really do spoiler-free reviews because I feel like so much of my analysis and critique is regarding the plot of the movie, but if you want me to do that, I will do that. Just let me know. So today we're going to be talking about Blink Twice, Strange Darling, and Alien Romulus. And Blink Twice is really being talked about a lot. I think it's a combination of things, but there's some controversy regarding it that I'm really kind of excited to talk about because like horror movies have been around for so long, and the fact that we haven't really introduced trigger warnings until now is kind of insane, but I'm gonna get to it. So first movie I'm gonna talk about is Strange Darling because this is the one I saw the most recently. So Strange Darling is basically the house that Jack built, but it's a woman. That is the best way that I can describe it to you. Basically it follows the story of a woman meeting a guy at a bar who is married. It's set up in chapters that are rearranged. So like they filmed chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, but the chapters are rearranged so that the first chapter you see is I think chapter 5, and then it goes chapter 3, yada yada yada. It messes with your mind and it makes it really hard to know what's going to happen next, which is like seriously a feat when it comes to horror movies. No one is able to do that nowadays because we've seen every single trope and we've seen it all before. And when I say house that Jack built, I'm not talking about like the grotesque gore of that movie, although there is some crazy violent scenes and violent deaths in Strange Darling. I'm talking about the rage and the psychopathy and like just the real tragedy of someone who doesn't have any empathy for any other human being and who has extreme trauma that they're taking out through violence in a way that's like staring into the black hole, black void. Like at the end of House That Jack Built, he's descending into hell, and that's kind of what the movie is you're watching the void, you're watching evil, and that's what happened with Strange Darling. Is she's chaos and evil, and she's just like a force of chaos in everything that she does. She has her own twisted motives, she has her own like urges that make her totally crazy. So I just felt that so strongly when I was watching the movie. I felt like this is a woman version of a serial killer in a different way than the Eileen Wuornos biopic we got. It's like an entirely different thing. It's really refreshing. Basically our main character, the woman, is a serial killer. The movie is set up so you think that it is the guy who's married who she goes on a date with. Like that's the entire way the movie is set up. And I kind of figured out the twist in the middle, but I think that's what you were supposed to do. Like it was pretty obvious. But she's the one that was actually chasing the guy, and he was like fighting for his life and trying to get her so he could take her in to the police station because he actually is a cop. The most disturbing scenes of this movie are at the very kind of end of the movie where the big reveal is, and you can see that she's literally torturing him in the motel that they chose to like get crazy in. Like it's really traumatizing. It's really disturbing, and it just goes on for so long. And it's basically a survival movie cut up into parts where you don't know who is running from who, and when you figure out the twist and it shows you everything that's happening, you're so enveloped in like this amazing portrayal of a serial killer that's like, I don't know how realistic it is. I'm not like a forensic psychologist, but it seemed really scary. She was like a shell of a person. It was so fun to watch. If you're into like slow burn horror where you can really analyze every single thing that a character is feeling, this is seriously the movie for you. I think there is basically no horror movies that show a female serial killer in this way. It teetered on the line of realism and like entertainment factor, so it wasn't like as serious as like an actual crime serial killer portrayal would be, but it was really close. I feel like with Audition, like it's kind of silly, it's kind of like cinematic. This was really teetering the line on very realistic. The movie starts and it gives you like a rundown of that this is a real serial killer and this is actually a portrayal of the last events that happened. And that was so fucking smart, because what it did was it takes the pressure off of not only the filmmaker but like the audience, because you're looking at it in this fake universe where it is a dramatization, and you're not looking at it as its movie, you're looking at it in the context of a different universe, which is so brilliant. And I think that's part of the reason why Blair Witch was so popular and so successful, is like it takes totally all of the pressure off of both parties, because it feels like sometimes when you're watching horror movies, you feel pressured to be scared, you feel pressured to believe it. But in this situation, it takes all of that context away, which is really fun, really smart. The acting was so incredible. I think that the woman in this movie was genuinely scary, especially the scenes of her like in the bathroom, and it was red lighting and she's like wiping away blood like it's literally nothing, like it's just like annoying to her. I actually was really unsettled by that. I think a lot of people are gonna not be scared by this because she is so beautiful, like the actress is so beautiful, but if you can kind of get past that and look at like what she's doing, if it were anybody else doing the actions that she's doing, it would be bone chilling, it would be scarier than a lot of movies are. I'm giving this movie 4 stars because I think that there are a little bit of complaints I have with it. The first one is like the pacing was a little bit too long for me. I think that it's super artsy and beautiful and it was all shot on film, so they deserve to take up all the space that they want, but I just felt like it was going on a little bit too long. I did see it at a nighttime showing though, so that might just be my problem. I also thought the casting was not that great for the guy, because he looked like such a sweetie that there was no moment where I thought that he was scary. Even at the beginning when it's really painted that he is the serial killer, I didn't really believe it because he is such a sweetie pie. Like, he looks so sweet and he doesn't look like he would do anything wrong. And I know that that is how Ted Bundy got away with everything, but when I'm watching a movie, I do have some kind of level of like, I know that casting exists. The soundtrack was so good. It was so refreshing and good, which is like crazy for horror movies. And my favorite part of it was, there's a part where in this survival scene, she goes to a couple's house in the mountains and they try to help her, and they're like these old hippies, and they make this food that is truly gross. They're really sweet. It's not supposed to be scary, but it's unsettling in a really different way, and it's so realistic, and they like put an entire thing of butter in with their eggs, like an entire stick of butter, and put jelly and syrup and whatever. And a little touch like that was so fun to watch because I didn't expect it, and that was just this whole movie. It was just really fun to watch because you haven't seen anything like it before, seriously. Literally my only complaints are some of the casting and the pacing, and like, not to say the performances weren't great, I just didn't love those two things. And I think that this movie needed a trigger warning. Blink Twice had a trigger warning, and I think that Strange Darling needed a trigger warning as well. There were scenes where she was basically essaying him because she was like on top of him and like mutilating him with a knife. It was really dumb. But I think we should start putting trigger warnings like that for movies like Strange Darling, where you have no idea that's where it's going, and it was marketed as like an artsy thriller horror movie, and it ended up being really disturbing. And it was a lot to look at. It was a lot, and because of those scenes, this is not a movie that I would just watch casually or put on for a large group. It's definitely a movie you watch by yourself. It's not one that I'm gonna rewatch for a while, so that's why it's getting 4 stars instead of 5. For a movie to get 5 stars, it's actually like, I'm really biased, and it's still a fantastic movie. You definitely should see it if you want to be like disturbed and scared. So now I'm gonna talk about Blink Twice, and Blink Twice did have a trigger warning. I'm gonna put the trigger warning up so you can see it and you can kind of decide what you think of it for yourself. Do I think horror movies need trigger warnings? Yes, I think it's a good idea. But I think that they don't really prepare people for what a movie is going to be like. And I think there is a lot of factors as to why Blink Twice is getting the treatment where people are saying that it's demonic, Quite literally, people are going online and saying that they're rebuking the movie in Jesus' name. It's like this entire phenomenon where it feels like we're having a resurgence of the satanic panic. And it's crazy because this movie is not that disturbing in the scheme of movies. And that's what I'm gonna want to talk about. So do I think it needed a trigger warning and it was a good idea to put it? 100%. Although, I think more than ever, especially with a huge actor like Channing Tatum being in a horror movie like this, I think people are going into horror movies not fully understanding that there is already a subculture and an entire gigantic group of people that basically love horror movies and are expecting to be grossed out, scared, disturbed every single time they step into a theater. And I think as things become more extreme, just in general, like everything is getting pushed a little bit more extreme. In the pop culture, Sabrina Carpenter's new video literally has levels of gore in it that I would have sought out as a tween, and I would have actually sought that out to be scared. And now it's casually in a music video. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, I'm just saying gore is so normalized in media now that it's like violence is in pop music videos, which is something that totally blows my mind. I feel like for a while the horror community was really sheltered and we were kind of in our own little bubble deciding on which ones were worth watching, which ones were scary. And now people are just going to the movie to see Channing Tatum and like getting faced with an extreme R&R movie that is like one of the most extreme genres in the horror culture. As many trigger warnings as you can put on a movie like this, I think it is a big mistake to censor movies and to try and make them more palatable for a larger audience, because it feels like with issues like SA, it's not respectful to the issue if you were to make the movie more palatable, if you were to make it less disturbing, because what Blink Twice did was it really put you in the situation where you had to face evils that were going on. It wasn't insinuated, it was directly in your face. It wasn't even exploitative. I've seen, and we've all seen, way more exploitative movies than Blink Twice. I don't know why anybody isn't bringing up the fact that A Clockwork Orange has the most graphic SA scene I've ever seen in a movie in the first 3 minutes of the movie. Blink Twice's SA scene is in the middle. There's like 2 scenes of it specifically, and you don't actually, it's not exploitative. It's like putting you in the situation where you feel scared, and that's what a horror movie does. And if you were to make that scene less disturbing, which I don't think you really could without being disrespectful to the trauma and the horror that exists in real life. And even if you did make the scene more palatable, we've seen time and time again, and there are real life examples of this, when horror becomes censored, people retaliate in an even more extreme way. And every time we've gotten more extreme in horror, it's literally been because it has been so censored and it's been not allowed. And like the whole idea of a horror movie is it's untamable, and it originated because it wasn't allowed to exist. So if you were to make these movies more palatable, it's not going to stop people making extreme horror movies anyway. Like the more you try and censor horror, the more extreme it becomes. Like one of the most fucked up, it's a terrible movie, like it's really bad, but one of the most fucked up horror movies ever, you know which one I'm talking about. It was literally made because of the feelings of censorship on the Serbian people by their government, and that's why it was funded and made. So if the studios and directors listen to people that literally are rebuking Blink Twice, the only thing that's going to happen is it's just going to get more extreme from here. I don't think that there is a way to say no more horror movies. Like, it's just not going to work. My yapping here is basically saying we have so many more opinions on horror movies than we've ever had, and it's causing it to be more mainstream, and that's going to cause so much backlash, because genuinely, if I know a lot of people in my life who could not watch the movies that I love. It's just the way it is. Some people love horror movies, some people don't. That's completely fine. It's just your tastes, like it's fine. It's just not for you. It doesn't mean it's demonic, and it doesn't mean that there is a hidden meaning or agenda about it. It just means maybe don't go to horror movies anymore. So Blink Twice is about two service worker women who meet a really famous influencer at their job because they cater to really rich events, and they get invited to his private island where they're participating in hedonism, participating in a slaycation. It's really beautiful. It made me want to go on vacation really badly when I watched it. It's so bright, and it's such a fun movie to watch because it's just bright, and that's my favorite horror. The market of like tropical horror has been saturated so hard because it's the best of both worlds. You get like horror and beautiful scenery, and I get super bored of dark horror movies, but this one stands out, and it's like it told all the other tropical horror movies, literally go home because you suck and you're bad. A lot of the things said and done by the service workers before they get to the island sets up kind of the themes of the whole movie. And what happens is after a few days at this island, they start to notice that there's dirt under their fingernails, they're waking up confused, and eventually one of the service worker girls goes missing. And I'm calling them service worker girls because of a really great compliment I have to the movie that I'm gonna get into. So they basically learn that a perfume that they're spraying in the afternoon or the morning or whatever when they get ready is actually making them forget whatever happened. So they're forgetting whatever happened that night, and what's happening that night is really obvious. Channing Tatum and his friends are essaying this group of women and one guy. So it's so obviously like a crime horror movie, like this is a crime, and it's so based on actual people's trauma, and it's based on actual things that happen everywhere, not just on tropical islands. The movie ends in a bloodbath, and we have a final girl, and she becomes the CEO of this guy's company. Throughout the movie, there's so many themes of like gray areas between right and wrong, and like if you should forget your trauma or if you shouldn't. It's great because when you're watching it, you're thinking about that thing, and you're thinking about, would I like to forget my trauma or would I not? It's just an idea that I've never ever thought about because it's just not possible, right? Right from the beginning, this movie did such a fantastic job at portraying what it's like to be a service worker, the type of humor that you have, the resilience, and just like the realism in their conversations. Like these two women, they're so obviously under the pressure of like rent, and they're under the pressure of being a service worker, and there's obviously this wealth gap, and it was so refreshing to watch a movie actually address that in a way that wasn't corny or didn't seem pandering. It seemed realistic, and I just saw so much of myself in the conversations they were having and their jokes and the way they were showing each other love, because it feels like people get out of touch with how regular people talk. And right from the beginning, I knew this would be a great movie because of how realistic their relationship was. And that made it even worse when she went missing, and it made it hit way harder because she was a real person. It was just a total subversion of every tropical horror movie I've seen, because usually the tropical horrors are like shallow, and the characters I don't really care about, and it was just made for the sake of like being on Fubi or whatever. The service worker girls weren't taking anything too seriously, because if you do take things too seriously when you're working in a restaurant, you will go batshit crazy. So the entire movie has that tone basically, where they're not taking it too seriously, they're joking around, and it's like the movie itself is never corny because of that fact. That nothing is ever being taken too seriously until it's traumatizing. I feel like horror movies often are just like trauma the whole way through, and they never really portray real life as well as this one does. I did want a little more from the ending scenes where they were like fighting them. I wanted a little bit more satisfying like gore scenes, because they deserved to get tortured, literally, like they were the worst people on the planet. But I think it was literally perfect other than my specific complaints. I really liked it. It was such a strong directorial debut by Zoe Kravitz. I was watching an interview or something where she literally said, or there was a quote of hers that said she just sits around and watches movies all day, and that's when I knew that it would be good, because the more movies you watch, the better director you are. I actually stand by that. I feel like I can tell when a director doesn't watch a lot of movies. That's really dumb, but I feel like I can just totally tell. I also loved the ending, because the Channing Tatum like ringleader of it all, he doesn't actually die. He gets tortured for eternity by her making him forget everything all the time, and he's basically unable to think for himself anymore, and she took over his company. And I know for a lot of people that's not going to be satisfying. You want him to just die. But if you watch a lot of horror movies, that is not real punishment. It's like, that is in no way a justification for everything that she went through. The only justification would be she never has to work again and her life is set from here on out. And when you're working in the service industry, that is a fucking dream. That is like just such a dream. And for her to end up with all of his wealth was satisfying. I actually can't even describe how satisfying that was. Also, the editing was really, really good. There's like scenes of people shaking cocktails and the editing is so satisfying. The soundtrack is really good. Another strange thing that I found really cool was there was a character who they kind of set up to be kind of a pick-me girl or something. And I was like, oh brother, another one of these like characters that are not really realistic. And then she ended up like being really chill in the end, and like they made it out together. Loved it, because I'm not saying that there aren't pick-me girls in real life, because trust me, there are, but they're not usually in the way that movies portray them as. Like, it's usually like so different. So I was just like, oh brother, another unrealistic character. So did it need a trigger warning? Yes. Do I think it's great? 100%. Last movie I'm going to talk about is Alien Romulus. Honestly, I don't have that much to say other than I loved the beginning, I did not like the middle, and I loved the end. It's set up in a universe where people are on multiple planets, and it starts off as this girl played by Ilysmmm and her robot brother are in the coal mines, and they're basically they're like trapped, indentured servitude in these coal mines on a different planet where there's no sun. And they're trying to get to a planet with sun with their group of friends. If you miss the first part of this movie, you're totally fucked. Like, I actually witnessed somebody come in late, miss the exposition, and then they left. And I'm like, yeah, because it would be so confusing if you didn't know at the beginning. Because the whole movie is they're trying to get these cryogenic chambers so they can go to this like other planet. But if you didn't know that, you'd be like, what is going on? So the majority of the movie is in this abandoned kind of space station where they're trying to steal these chambers so they can escape onto another planet that has sun, and I guess it's beautiful, and I guess it slays. All the performances were really good. It was just such an average horror monster flick in the middle. The beginning, I love some world building, so I really, really liked the beginning when they were like in the universe with the weird planet with no sun. I just love that crap, so I really liked the beginning. The middle, I felt like there were way too many parts where the alien was like about to kill someone and then it didn't, and then it like just had enough time to get away. That happened like 6 or 7 times, and I was like, okay, the plot armor is too strong. And when people would like die in the movie, I was not surprised, because I'm like, obviously it's going to be Ilysmmm, final girl, like obviously. There was basically no like character building, so I did not care about any of the characters except for Ilysmmm and her brother. I loved the robot brother. He was so adorable. There is a part where he becomes evil, and like that was kind of silly because his microchip got changed out. And when you talk about it out loud, it like actually is silly. But it was really cool because the evil robot brother trope was actually ended up being the audience insert, because he was evil because he was doing what was best for their survival chances. So he was doing all the things that in a horror movie the audience is screaming to do, like don't save them, run away, run away. And you end up kind of not wanting them to listen to the robot. So it was like really smart to do that, because it takes you back into the movie. Like, I feel like if the robot wasn't there telling them how to survive, you would be telling them, don't save her, and it would just get flat, I feel. But like the beginning, love the world building. The middle, it was a little slow. Like, that's crazy to say about Alien Romulus, but it was a little bit slow for me. I did not love it. Didn't love the character building. But the end, there is literally a guy she has to defeat who is an 8-foot tall actual person wearing an alien suit, who is an anthropomorphic alien. Basically what happened is her pregnant friend got aliened, so the alien that came out of her was like a human / alien hybrid, and it's the creepiest shit ever. I was gasping in the theater, screaming. I was so excited. I was like, I'm scared to death. I loved it. And it was so obvious it was someone in a suit and not CGI, because CGI is not that scary. Like, let's be totally honest. Like, we can tell when it's human or not. I just literally could not get enough of that SPC creature at the end. I haven't seen any of the other movies though, and that's really sacrilegious, I know. So I don't know if they've shown that creature before, but God, that was so sick. I loved it. And it actually brought the movie up like a star at the end for me. So I think I gotta give it 3.5 stars. Would I watch this if it weren't in the theater? I don't think so. I think if I watched it on the TV, it'd be too dark. I wouldn't be into it. You need to be in a theater to enjoy it, and that's the thing. If I were watching it on my shitty TV, it would be like a 2 or a 3-star movie. The 3.5 is if you're seeing it in the theater. I think it fell into this trap though, where space is so scary without an alien in it. Like, it really is scary. It's quite literally cosmic horror. It's something we don't understand, and it's scary by itself. So when you add an alien into it, you're automatically making it less scary, because the idea of space is so consuming, and if you really think about it, it's too much to even think about. So once you start adding creatures that people made into space, you're actually making it more comforting, because the known that we know a human made this creature is way, 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 way more comforting than the unknown of space. And space is so creepy. It smells like burning rubber. It's completely silent, and you would explode if you were in space. So I think the Alien Romulus movie didn't do a good job at scaring me. It did a good job at entertaining me, especially at the end. But in no way am I shitting on it. I think it's really great. I think there's so much creativity in it. The practical effects were really, really good. I loved how they did CGI and practical in a way that was cohesive, and it worked. Did not love the soundtrack, because the soundtrack was really marvelly to me. It was like really like a lot of orchestra, kind of cheesy crescendos and stuff. I was like, okay, like I'm sick of her. Anyway, I'm getting on a tangent. I think all of these movies you would not regret seeing in the movie theater. I most recommend Blink Twice, if you're up for it, that is. Strange Darling is second, Alien Romulus is third. Strange Darling though is extremely artsy, and it's a little bit less entertaining than Blink Twice. Blink Twice just has it all. Alright, that's all I got, and thank you for watching my video, and thank you for clicking on my YouTube channel. If you want to see a specific horror review or analysis, let me know and I might do it. If you're looking for horror recommendations, I just gave 80 movies over on my TikTok account. I made like 80 movies on a list, and I recommending them. They're not new movies or movies you haven't heard of, but I wanted to have one place where I had every single movie I loved, so I did that. Okay, peace and love.